Listen, you should really stop taking your breaks because your breaks aren't helping. And while you watch me draw this, I'm not promoting toxic hustle culture, but I want to expose you to the fact that you've actually never been taught how to take a break. And the breaks that you're currently taking, the way that you're currently doing it, is hurting your artwork, not helping it, and it's killing your motivation too. And that's because you never knew this. Now, all throughout any type of self-help, self-improvement, and definitely YouTube content, you'll see this too. Everybody's all about take a break, take a break, take a break, take a break. You don't feel like this, take a break. Instead of going through that, take a break. Oh, you're not in your best zone? Take a break. But there's a big issue that I really want to blow the lid off of right now, and it's definitely why your breaks aren't helping you, and it's the reason why I'm making this video. And that's just because I often find that people are very confused on what this actually means and what does it look like. Because let me just guess from you, when you're told, hey, take a break, what that means typically is that you're then going to go ahead and just do whatever you want. You're just going to disengage from your artwork and you're going to launch yourself into something else. And the problem here that I tend to realize is that what that actually does for you is that it just enables you to just launch into something that's momentarily pleasurable, more pleasurable than your art making experience. And that's a problem because that doesn't help you. And what this turns into is typically it turns into an excuse for you to launch into self-indulgent behavior over intentional behavior, which is why I want to help you actually do this better, and we're going to talk about that today. Now, I do want to let you know, what is the point of taking a break and why you should take breaks and you should do them better, because what the true purpose of this is, and I'm going to explain to you multiple ways that you can do this throughout this video today, is that you should focus on how do you disengage? How do you step away? How do you allow your brain to rest? How do you allow recovery to actually happen so that you can step into being the creative that you want to be and you are meant to be? Because the issue of taking a bad break is that what you're actually doing is you're not helping yourself be more creative. You're not helping your motivation. You're not helping your potential. You're hurting it because what you're actually doing is you're closing all of your creative channels. And that's a problem that nobody discusses. So throughout this video, I want to give you a really comprehensive set of guidelines. Hey, you can do it in so many great ways. They're going to be so healthy for you. And it's really going to reinvigorate everything that you want to do from now on. Because if you want to open up your greater channels for creativity and you want to learn how to break well instead of breaking bad, then here are some suggestions for you. Now, do you ever feel like there's just intense resistance to you even starting something? Or have you been laboring through your craft for a while and you're just like, man, I just don't have any energy to go through this, to sit down here and do this any longer? Well, here's an easy thing that you can definitely think about doing. And there's a multitude of different levels you can do this at and different intensity levels. But I'm gonna first off recommend that you should definitely get out and exercise. And listen, artists, we glorify being in terrible physical health way too much, and it has to stop, and it's got to start with you, friend. If you have a greater physical well-being, your creative well-being will flourish. So if you take a look at how do you actually do this, okay? If you're like, man, I just feel way too tired. If you're just going through your projects and you just all of a sudden hit this wall and it feels like, man, I just can't persist, okay? Can you just get down and do some really simple floor exercises for 5 minutes? Because oftentimes what happens when we're being creative, when we're in that creation zone, is that our body and mind just feels completely depleted, and you forcing your heart to pump harder, to move faster, and you feel that blood circulation, you'll feel a resurgence on you right there. Another way that you can do this inside is, hey, look, can you just look up like a 10 to 15 minute workout video on YouTube? It's totally free, and you can go ahead and do this at whatever intensity level is best for you and your physique. Whatever body type you have, you can accomplish that. You can also do this outdoors. You can also do this socially. Like, can you go out and play flag football? Can you play basketball? You can do that by yourself. You can just go outside for a little bit and just shoot some hoops. You can go outside and kick a soccer ball around, okay? You can do that with or without somebody else. You don't need to have the excuse of, oh, well, I don't have somebody to play football with because I don't have 16 friends. That's okay. You don't need that. So if you're doing this, let me know down below so that other people get some great ideas from you too and get inspired by what you're doing on this. But y'all, we cannot glorify being in terrible physical health because that is a major creative blocker for you. And if you're feeling like, man, I just feel like I need to step away, I need to take a break, you know what? That might be your body telling you like, hey man, or hey girl, you need to have a moment here where you stop sitting down and being stale and being stagnant in your physical being, and you need to launch into something that's actually strenuous, because that's what our bodies were meant for. That's what we were actually genetically designed to do, is to be active. So when we're engaged in being inactive, at least physically speaking, what that does is it stops your best version of yourself from flourishing. And when you sync the mind, the body, and the creative soul, nothing can stop you. How's that? Now this one I'm going to tell you is going to bring forth so many great ideas. It's really going to help with your imagination, but it's also probably the one that you neglect because most people in the world neglect this really heavily. So did you know that the average American household did not even buy one book this past year? But I'm going to tell you this, if you need a break from you actually producing artwork, I'm going to suggest that you pick up a book and start reading. And there are so many great genres, so many great things that you can go into, whether it's fantasy, whether it's fiction, whether it's nonfiction, whether it's historical, whether it's self-help or self-improvement too. There's so many great things that you have to learn about. And especially too, you want to think about how that can also help your inner well-being. What we need to pay more attention to as an artist is our interiority, because literally your artwork is a reflection of how you are inside here. And just to put this into perspective for you, are you aware that the average CEO reads 60 books a year? Yeah, 60. I didn't stutter up on that. That's the real statistic. And just think about this, and let me ask you, like, how many books have you read this year? Myself personally, like, I know I've hit over 60, but that's also because I'm in a dissertation program. But for you, here's why it's also really important for you, is that when you're in that production zone of creating artwork, your brain is going on overdrive, isn't it? And you're thinking about so many things and you're feeling so many things. But listen, when you actually sit down and read, and listen, I want to make this very explicit. This is not an audio book. This is very different, okay? What it does is it slows your brain down. It focuses you in and it narrows your vision into one single thing, which is letters forming words. And what that does for you is it actually allows your brain, yes, to take an actual break and stay away from things that we're talking about throughout this entire video. And then more importantly too, is it's accessing other forms of intelligence. You're turning off your visual intelligence, you're turning on a different form of intelligence. And then here's another great thing, is that oftentimes through reading, this is where the genesis of a lot of great ideas will come from. Man, I can't tell you how many times I have watched a great YouTube video about somebody like designing something or creating a character from it, or like, have you ever seen videos? Tell me about this down below. Like, do you love the videos where people actually create like the book authentic version of a character? That's so cool. And what if you could do that too? What if you could rethink what your ideas or what your project is, and you could be exposed to new versions of that, and then you can insert that into your current projects. Wouldn't that be great? What's your plan for reading this year? Now, the biggest issue surrounding this topic is you have learned to want to always be mediated, which means that you always are in the presence of media. And this is typically the toxic association that people make, and I'm going to discuss with you many intentional ways that you need to disassociate yourself from media when you're taking a break. And the reason why you have this love affair, and everybody does, it's not just you, and I'm not putting you down if you do, because it seems normal, and we've normalized it ever since you were kids. And so let me paint this picture and tell me down below if this is exactly what you grew up with, okay? So listen, when you used to get home from school and then your parents got home from work, what did your typical household look like? Because it typically looks something like this, where you would get home and then you would eat dinner, and then you would sit down and you would watch television, or you would sit down and go watch a YouTube video, or you would sit down and you play video games, and your parents would sit down and then they would just gorge themselves on media consumption. But this is a problem. And while this seems like it's seemingly innocent, and it doesn't seem like it's hurting you, it doesn't seem like it's stealing your attention and stealing your creativity, and just to be honest, it's stealing your potential away. It's been so normalized that if you're taking a break and you're introducing media into it, I just want to let you know, that's not a break. It's actually pushing your brain over the edge, and we're going to discuss as we go through other topics in this and other better ways for you to actually take a break that don't involve an electronic device, why this is not something that's ever going to help you, and it actually, full halt, will stop you from ever having any type of rest on your brain. And this brings about multiple issues, such as you being overstimulated, such as you having more anxiety. And so as we go through the rest of these, I do want to have you just be aware of the fact that I am going to be teaching you how to avoid mediation. And at the start of it, you need to ask yourself, have you actually been conditioned to be mediated, or have you been conditioned to avoid mediation in your breaks? Which is it for you? Now, the next type of break I really encourage you to get into is hitting that like and subscribe button and coming back for some more content like this, because y'all, I try and make content that nobody else is really talking about, because I want to help you out in the ways that nobody else is helping you. And my friend, if you're on board with that, if this is helping you, please share it with somebody that you know and love so it can help them too. And then also learn why this is a great strategy and it's so important for you. Now, this next one, you're probably avoiding this, like dead stop. You would never even think about this. In fact, ever since you were a kid, you've kind of seen this as the enemy. But I want to tell you that this is where your absolute best ideas will ever come from, because it's where inspiration are born. And let me just ask you this. When you think about being bored, does that just trigger you? Do you just think that like, oh my God, I just can't handle this, and like, oh, I hate being bored? But listen, y'all, hold on. Being bored is actually one of the best things that your body needs, and you've actually been conditioned to get out of a state of boredom. And what I want to urge you just to consider is how you can actually insert more boredom into your life, because this is actually where your brain rests, it recovers, it's able to store away what it's learned, you're able to emotionally process what you're going through way better than you currently are right now. And it's actually going to make more room and more space for you to make more leaps in your artwork. And here are some suggestions how you can do this more easily. So somebody like me, I have an insanely busy schedule. I don't get a lot of free time to myself. So for example, when I drive to work, oftentimes I am one of those people that I just don't play anything in my car. There's no music, there's no podcast. And I'll do this either on my way to work, or I'll do this on my way back from work, and I've got like a 30 to 40 minute commute. So I get some good solid time in there. And oftentimes too, I find that this is really great because I am so done with just hearing people talk sometimes. Other things that you can do too, like what if you just got up in the morning and you just sat down and just had your coffee or had your tea or have your breakfast in just complete silence? What if the next time that you feel like, oh man, I'm so compelled to just pick up my phone and I don't like it right now, what if you just sat there? And what if you just existed in that? And here's what I want to urge you just to consider. When you think about where your best ideas come from, it's not while you're playing video games, it's not while you're watching TikTok, it's not while you're watching TV. It's going to be in the moments where there's nothing going on. And oftentimes, where do most people say that they have their best ideas? It's usually like in the shower, it's in a waiting room, it's when their phone's dead. So what we've been taught to do though is remove ourselves from any state of boredom, and we see boredom as the enemy. We see it almost like a pejorative term, and you see how kids hate boredom because they've been overstimulated. That's another topic we'll talk about in a little bit. But I want to encourage you, make more intentional boredom. Do you think you can do that? Because I guarantee you this is going to be absolutely life-changing for you and your creativity. Now, when you're taking a break, another issue that I identify is that it seems like it's just at your whim. It's at your feeling. You're like, I feel like taking a break and I feel like doing it for this long and I feel that this is great. I want to let you know that if you are taking an indefinite break, that's not a break, friend. That's a stop. That's a hard pause. And if you're taking a prolonged break until you just feel like coming back to it, that isn't taking a break. That's you just giving in to childishness, laziness, and it's enabling. And the focus of you taking a break is not so that you can live in being in a non-productive state, but to excel you when you actually want to be productive. So what I want to advise you on right now is that if you're going to take a break, you need to set a limit on it. And look, just be honest with yourself on this one. There are so many great fun things you can do in this world, right? There are so many great things that can take your time and attention away. And the issue is that if you are just focusing on your whims and listening for your motivation in order to help you get into that productive zone, then that will never serve you and it will never help you and you will never achieve what you want to because you're focusing on the wrong thing. And so the way I suggest for you is this. Set a limit for how long you are taking a break. Is it going to be for 30 minutes? Is it going to be for an hour? Is it going to be for a few hours? Maybe you're having just a really rough time and you're going to say, today, no. If you're going through something or you've just gone through a whole lot of things, okay? Like especially if you've been going for project after project after project. Maybe you're going to say, I'm going to take a week off. Maybe you need to just go ahead and just take a whole month off. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? However, though, you do need to set a hard limit. And for me, I often find myself doing this too. I'm gonna say to myself, okay, look, I'm just gonna take an hour and I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna take an hour where I'm just gonna go and rest on the couch and not look at my phone and not do anything and just be alone and be present in just how I'm thinking, how I'm feeling in that moment. And I've also done it where I've just been completely overwhelmed with everything that I was doing, like when I'm doing multiple projects and working with loads of people and writing for my dissertation. And I'm just like, you know what? I just need a week off. And that's okay. There's nothing to feel guilty about. You don't need to feel like you're being lazy in you taking a break. But again, as long as you're breaking the right way, it's okay. But you gotta set a hard limit on it because otherwise what you do is you fall into like, oh, I'm having so much fun doing this. I'll just extend this until I feel like going back. But I'm gonna be honest with you right now, okay? Even though I'm called the Art Mentor, if you ask me, Sean, do you want to play video games or do you want to make art? I'm going to be like, yeah, I want to play video games instead because it's so flippin' fun and it's so addicting. And that's okay to admit that to yourself. But because you can admit that to yourself, then you know you gotta set a cap on that. Can you do that? Now, this next type of break is one of the best things for you, but it's also something that not too many people do, and it's how you're going to connect back with your roots here. Literally, because for this one, I want to advise you to get into nature a lot more. There's so many times, and when you just think about it, we live in artificial environments. We glorify these rectangular prisons that we absolutely force ourselves into, that we exist in, and that we inevitably thrive in. And we have families, and we have great careers, and we have fun projects and everything. But man, this is not how we are supposed to be. And if you also want to talk about one of the worst links to social and emotional issues that people have, it's this. It's that you're just inside all the time. So stepping outside, being outdoors, being involved with nature is definitely going to help you. And here's multiple ways that you can do this. So first off, can you actually just go for a walk outside? Can you take a walk around your neighborhood? Can you drive to a nearby park? Or can you take the bus, take a train, whatever, and go to a park? Just walk around for a little bit, okay? Can you maybe even go on a hiking path somewhere, okay? It's so great and so meaningful for you as a human being to be outside in the presence of sunlight. If you didn't know this, that you being in the sun for just 15 minutes triggers so many great chemicals that your body needs, and it also helps you sustain a better mood and a better emotional health. Can you go for a bike ride? Can you go skateboarding? Can you go rollerblading? Does anybody rollerblade? Tell me if this is you down below. I used to love that. You can also take this to a more rigorous version too. Can you go kayaking? Like there's so many great things. And you think about like what human beings were meant to do and how we were meant to live. We're supposed to be outside. Our eyes literally need to see the outside and see the blue sky to wake us up. Now, a big thing that I really want to make sure that you're doing on this is that you need to make sure that while you're outside and you're enjoying Mother Nature is to not bring your cell phone along for that ride. Yes, that means no podcast. That means no exterior stimulation. Just be in tune with nature. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? Be super present with this one, because the second that you introduce mediation into this, and the second that you do that, you're not taking a break anymore. So do you love going out into nature? And what kind of things do you love to do? Because that is a great break for you. You can do this really short or you can do this longer, but it's gonna work outstanding for you. Next, I want to make all the nerds in the building happy and healthy too. And I just want to suggest this. So when you are going through a lot of big projects, and especially when you've been laboring for a long time, and you're going to start to feel this itch here, and you're going to feel this itch where you're like, man, I need to be around people, because listen, you being an artist, I just want to be honest, it's a very lonely task. Most of the time, you're completely isolated, you're self-isolating yourself, and you're gonna naturally feel this compulsion to be in a more communal setting. You're gonna feel this compulsion to want to socialize, and that's great. And I wanna advise you on how you can do this in a structured and healthy way. So one of the best things I'm gonna urge you to be a part of is social gaming. And no, I'm not talking about video games, we'll talk about that in a minute. What I'm talking about is actual board games, okay? So just as an example, like, do you love to play tabletop RPGs? Are you maybe into some like Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that, where you like, again, socialize with an entire group? Are you into like, maybe you play board games? This can be with your friends, it can be with your spouse, it could be with your kids or your whole family. You play some Monopoly, maybe you play some Mousetrap, or you maybe play some Trouble or anything like that. This is an outstanding way for you to scratch your social itch, for you to disengage and to reinvigorate yourself, and you kind of feed your creative soul. You have some fun, you have some meaningful interactions too. And this is so important because it creates curiosity, it creates flair, it creates interest into something else. It releases your pleasure chemicals and it scratches your social itch. And then the other thing that you want to remember while you're doing this is that I really want you to be present, okay? And we're not taught enough, nor are we really doing enough to be present with the people that we're around. And just to be honest, one of the worst things that you can do is, while you're trying to be social with people, is to have your cell phone out. And just think about it, like when you go out to eat or when you're with friends, what does everybody do? They just slap their cell phone out right up on the table. You want to be totally present. Just keep that away, keep it in your pocket, leave it in your car while you're being with other people. Actually be social and be present, because even if you only have a short window, period of time that you can devote to other people, you need to be present in it, or else you might not even remember it and they might not even appreciate you for it. You ever thought about that? So what kind of things do you like to do on this note? What kind of games do you like to play? Throw some stuff down below. I really want my comments to be like a whole idea generation pot, so that everybody watching this can understand, how do you take a better break? Now, this is the topic I've been dancing around throughout this entire video. And I want to explain to you why, if this is done wrong, it's going to absolutely annihilate your artistic potential and your future. Now, you've definitely heard me talk to you about like why you should not introduce any type of a phone, any type of a screen, or with you're with friends. It doesn't count as a break when you're like watching movies and things like that, because all you're doing is you're just redirecting your hard focus into another form of media. And then that also kind of tends to lead you into disengaging from your artwork for very prolonged, extended periods of time until you feel like coming back to it. And I've struggled with this myself. I'll talk to you about that in a sec, why this was so hard for me to overcome, but it's why you need to practice more responsible mediation for yourself, okay? And I'm not saying by any means stop playing video games, stop watching Netflix, stop watching movies. That's fun stuff, okay? We're creators. We appreciate other creators, and we get to some great ideas from those too. No doubt, we're all influenced from it from a young age, right? The issue is this though, and I really want you to heavily consider this, my friend. You need to pick a lane right now. If you want to be an artist, that entails you have to make a decision. Are you going to be a media consumer or be a media creator? Because you will not succeed in doing both of them and being great. So here's what I mean, basically. If you're focused on being a consumer, sure, you play loads of games and you watch loads of TV and you spend loads of time on Facebook, on TikTok, okay? And then if you're a creator, you're focused on your production, you're focused on your dreams, you're focused on your projects and your potential, right? You're focused on doing things that will bring you more of yourself. The difference here is, are you going to spend your entire life focused and wholly dedicated towards you actually making something that's fulfilling, or are you going to be focused on helping somebody else achieve their dreams, which is where you are if you are focused on being a consumer. And I just want to ask you right now, what is your split over the next week or in the past weeks that you've been consuming versus creating? Because, my friend, if you've been heavily overloaded on consumption versus creation, then this will never help you. It's also why you feel more depressed. It's also why you feel more anxious. It's also why you're masking what you're currently going through. And it's also why it's destroying your artistic potential. And listen, I'm gonna make an entire video about this coming up real soon because this is such a heavy topic. I can't just talk about it in this segment for just a couple minutes. So how could you introduce this? How could you actually use this to propel yourself? One of the things I've started to do is implement what I call this 30% rule, which basically means that if I take a look at the totality of my production time over the course of a week, let's say it's 10 hours, then I am only allotting myself 30% of that time towards me being consumer media. And for me, it's a lot of the time playing video games or like watching an anime, something like that. But then here's another great way that you can do it too. Let's say that you accomplish a big task, you hit a big milestone, you hit a big goal. Then what if you use that as a reward for yourself? What if that's the reason why you actually work so hard? Like you give yourself a quick little dopamine burst and hit, and you enjoy something for yourself. Are you able to do this, or what kind of rules and boundaries do you set for yourself? Because if you don't, you're just gonna get sucked into consumption voids. Is this you? Now I gotta let you know a common problem that you've probably never really thought about, but it's the real reason you're stressed out. It's the real reason why you're anxious. It's a real reason too why it tends to cause depression at multiple points in your year or just helps you sustain it. It's actually something that starts a lot, and you see this a lot in kids nowadays too. And that's just because, have you ever considered that you're just overstimulated? And just think about this, right? Think about visually how assaulted we are in our current society, okay? Think about, you cannot just wake up, walk around your house without stimulation. You've got screens and TVs and phones and tablets and game systems, and then you drive to work, and what do you see? And you see billboards and ads, and you've got music, and you've got podcasts, and you've got other things going on in your car, and you've got people talking all the time to you. If you're in a very socially based job or career path too, again, if you work with teams or you're maybe an educator like myself, then you're constantly talking to people. And then you come home, and then again, what do? Then you launch into mediation, you launch into what you think is taking a break, but it's not taking a break, it's you switching and staying in consumption mode, where you're gonna now watch TV and you're gonna play games and you're gonna do things that always involve screens. Well, the issue there, friend, is that your brain just can't handle it. It can't take it. There's too much of it. And when you think about what generally causes people to get stressed out, especially a lot nowadays, and this has been a heavy burden on our moods for a long time, is just that we're overstimulated. We just don't know how do we process and handle it because we never take a break. And I've literally worked with people in my mentorship where they're just like, Sean, like, oh my God, like I go from this to this to this, or like, man, I just get loads of emails while I'm at work, before I get to work, and when I get home, and somebody always needs me. And one of the things I recommend to people is like, you have to structure in time to just let yourself decompress. And do you do this? Because oftentimes, like I've even suggested to people like, hey, you know what you need to do? You need to just sit down, lie down on the couch, or lie down on your bed, or sit in a chair and do absolutely nothing for 20 minutes. This is almost like restarting your computer. It's just like refreshing yourself, because when you're going from stimulus to stimulus to stimulus to stimulus, it just makes all the wrong chemicals in your body come to light. It just forces them into you, and you feel more anxious, and you feel more depressed, and you just can't process it, and you get overwhelmed. And it's because of overstimulation. And that's why breaks are so important for you, and it happens during your artwork. You're making decision, stimulus, result. You need a break from that, and you need to not be stimulated. So what do you think? How do you handle that? Now, for all the lovers out there, you're gonna love this. And for all those that aren't lovers, that's okay too. Because one of the best breaks I'm gonna say you also wanna structure in are dates. And I'm not just talking again for those that are romantically involved, but I'm saying you wanna go ahead and just take solid time to just be one-on-one with another human being that's deeply meaningful with your life. And this can even be you, okay? Like, just for example, if you're just flying solo and you don't have anyone in your life, okay, you should just set a date to do something that's cool and meaningful. Maybe you've been meaning to like make a new card deck for your Magic the Gathering deck. Maybe you've been wanting to go see a movie. Cool, go take yourself out to a movie, okay? Maybe you've been meaning to go check out that convention or check out, that new cool place, or go have dinner with yourself, okay? And I know how you're gonna feel about that, and you're gonna be like, ugh, I'm gonna be weird. People are gonna look at me strange. Who cares? You need to treat yourself like a good, proper human being. You having solo time for yourself is also an actual rest. It's time for your brain to just process it, to enjoy something that's deep and meaningful for you. Now, for those of us that do have a romantic interest, do have a partner, do have a spouse, do have families, like, you should do this too, because otherwise what you're going to do is you're going to get way too comfortable sacrificing the most meaningful people in your life. The reason why you work so hard, the reason why you want to create the modeling that you want to be for that partner, for your families, for your children, you're going to negate all of that for art. And that's not going to help you. That's going to hurt you long term. And one of the things that I've definitely tried to do a lot more in this past year is to just structure more time for like me and Mrs. the Art Mentor to go out and to have some fun. Or maybe, or sometimes, we got 2 kids. We can't always just go out all the time. We don't have babysitters and all that. So we'll just order in some food and have a night to ourselves. Have and spend some time today, maybe thinking about, how do I create a little bit more romantic time, or at least some you time where it's just you alone, and again, without looking at cell phones, without watching TV, without you doing anything that's gonna pull you away and allow your brain to not take a break. How's that sound? Now, this next one is an instant mood stabilizer, and it's also a great way for you to really make sure that you feel totally in the zone when you come back from it. And I just want to ask you, like, how often do you laugh? Like, how often do you put yourself in a situation where you just can't help yourself? And what I'm suggesting for you for your next break style here is insert some comedy into your life, okay? Have you ever gone to a comedy show? Or when's the last time that you maybe watched or listened to your favorite comedian, okay? And if you don't have one, have you considered maybe looking up? Because I want to just assume this, but maybe I don't want to too. Like, do you have anybody that makes you laugh in your life? Do you need to be around somebody who's just hilarious to be around? They just give off that good energy. Or especially like for me, like I don't have anybody necessarily in my life like that, but one of the things I'll do is I'll check out, like a special that's maybe like an hour long from this comedian that's hilarious, or a new one that looks really funny. Maybe you'll see this on Netflix. Maybe you'll go ahead and you'll see this on whatever platform that you like to watch that on. Or maybe they have a podcast where they're just flipping hysterical. And what that does is it triggers all the right chemicals in your brain. However, though, I do want to guide you through what not to do. I would heavily avoid Instagram or other algorithm-based places, other platforms that involve you swiping to find it, because inevitably you're just going to get sucked down that consumption void, that hole again, and that's not going to help you, friend. I would say go instead straight to the source. Watch that, laugh your butt off, cry while you're doing it, have a great time, and then shut it off. Because again, you gotta structure your break. You can't just be like, oh, let me just watch this for hours and hours because I feel like it, okay? Structure it, set a hard cap, hard limit on it, and really enjoy yourself. Because the more that you laugh, the better you're gonna feel inside. Are you making time for this? Now, can I talk to you about what is a major misgiving, a major misunderstanding with self-care? Because that is such a hot topic, isn't it? Everybody's talking about self-care and self-help and treat yourself and do this and that, and you gotta be in touch with your feelings. Correct, all of it. However, though, I just wanna ask you this, especially on the topic of you taking a break. Are you taking a break, or are you running away from how you're feeling? Because I just wanna be honest with you. We are taught most of the time, not how do we process, not how do we handle, not how do we be better at it, but instead, how do we numb ourselves from it? How do we just not feel it? And this is a massive issue with media consumption. And just think about it like this. Have you ever seen a kid flipping out, and then what do the parents do? They just give them an iPad, they give them a tablet, they give them a game, they turn on the TV. That's not teaching them how to emotionally process themselves like mature human beings. It's teaching them to just switch their focus It's not teaching them how to act better. And then even as adults, like I'm just gonna say throughout all of my formative years, and especially I carried this into adulthood, if I had a bad day, if I was feeling bad, if I had a fight with my spouse, if I had a bad day at work, okay, then I would come home, sit down, I would just play video games. And then you're gonna trick yourself into saying, well, that made me feel better. No, it didn't. I just wanna be honest, that doesn't make you feel better. It just numbs you so you don't feel it. And that's a big issue. It's a major cause, a major concern for why you feel so miserable. And it's not a break for you to do that either. Now, however, though, sometimes you do need to numb for a period just so that you're out of the moment. But then you gotta structure it so that you can snap back into it, okay? So I'm not saying give it up altogether by any means. I still play games, but every once in a while. It's not that much anymore because I wanna feel more in tune with how I feel. And what I would say you wanna really heavily avoid while you're going through breaks is you numbing yourself, you running away from the problem, because you running away from the problem doesn't fix the problem, it exacerbates the problem. And if you're feeling a certain way, okay, give yourself a very minor break and then introduce some of the breaks that we've talked about today. Can you insert more boredom so that you actually can think about it? Because one of the worst things that you can actually do is to not think about the problem. And then most importantly, for you not to act upon the problem, for you not to change the circumstances so the problem doesn't persist. But listen, friend, I just want to tell you, human being to human being here, you numbing yourself from the problem and running away from the problem doesn't make the problem go away, nor does it constitute a good break. It's actually how you break bad. Have you ever thought about that? Now this next one, I'm gonna admit, I do not usually partake in this very often, but in researching for this video, I couldn't exclude it because it comes up almost everywhere. And it's a topic of, have you ever meditated? And I keep on finding more and more research that really shows how this is highly beneficial. And this can be a great way for you to just shut down and shut out the outside world and tune yourself into your interior world. Tune yourself into how are you thinking? How are you feeling? What comes up when there's nothing going on? What comes up when you just have to focus on your physical body, just completely at rest, and there's nothing else going on around you? And there's a lot of ways that you can do this too. You can do it outside, you can do it inside, you can do it in a group setting, you can do it in multiple different ways where you are actually going to allow yourself to disengage from your task, to disengage from this hustle culture that tells you gotta be doing something all the time or making you feel guilty that you're not doing anything at the moment. Focus on instead, how can you meditate? How can you go through breath work as well? Breath work is extremely important. It's important for you in order to stabilize your mood, to stabilize your emotions, to stabilize too your anxieties, or if you're somebody that struggles with depression. Just as an example, like why breath work is so important for you, and it's an essential element of really good meditation, is because, like, just for example, if you've ever been around people that smoke, and look, both my parents smoked, I can't stand smoking whatsoever. If you're somebody that smoked, I'm not judging you for it. I just can't stand the smell of it. And I literally still hold my breath whenever I walk by somebody smoking. Are you like this too? Is anyone else out there just weird like me? But the reason why smoking often calms people down isn't the act of smoking. It's because you breathe. It's because when you take in, you take that big and exhale. And that's actually got nothing to do with smoking. Just to be clear, smoking is not an effective means for you managing yourself, but the breath work associated with it is, and it literally helps you calm down. There are studies on studies that show this kind of stuff. So for you, have you ever thought about looking into that? Have you ever thought about instituting that? It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to meditate for like 4 hours or go away for a retreat for a week to do it, but can you just maybe think about like, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed by my art project. Maybe I need to take 30 minutes and just do that. Maybe I take 15 minutes and do that. Have you ever thought about this? Or are you doing this right now too? Tell me how. Now, a big break that I hear all the time is definitely this idea of just rest, okay? And sometimes, yeah, you're gonna start to feel a little sleepy. You're gonna start to nod off. And the issue though that I always notice is that when people say, I just need to rest, is that they immediately rest with a screen, with technology involved with it. And again, as we've learned in this video, that's not a rest. Just so you know this too, most of the time, if you're feeling chronically sleepy, you're not physically sleepy. You're afflicted with something else, and it's much deeper than what you think. And I actually made an entire video about it right here so you can go learn about it. Hope this helped you. If it did, share with somebody that you know, and thanks so much. See you next time.